life throws at us, we'll face it together.
As a family.
Hey, welcome back to ScreenCrush. I'm Ryan Airy, and this is all of the Easter eggs, references, and little things you might have missed in the first trailer for the Fantastic Four: First Steps. Guys, I am so excited for this movie. The Fantastic Four are one of my all-time favorite comics, and I am pumped to see them portrayed on screen for the first time.
Actually, I think this is like the 5th Fantastic Four.
I am excited to see them in their very own movie for the first time. Now, before we get into the trailer, I do want to explain to you guys why this movie is so important for the MCU and for comic fans. And I am so excited to show you guys 2 new merch designs for our merch store this month. We have this commemorative stamp for America's ass and the 8-bit cutscene where an RPG cap has 2 choices: Ask If Anyone Gets Out or Hail Hydra. We're always dropping new deals and bundles in our store, so hit the link below to become a member so you don't miss a thing. So the Fantastic Four are called Marvel's first family because they really did kick off this episodic 60-year storyline that Marvel Comics is still telling. They were created by Jack Kirby and Stan Lee in 1960, and they essentially started the Marvel Age of Comics. You see, back then, superheroes hadn't really been popular since the end of World War II. Comics back then were mostly sci-fi, westerns, romance books, and monster stories. Now that started to change when DC's The Flash was reinvented in Showcase number 4 in 1956, which was followed by other superheroes like the Green Lantern being reimagined, and then all those heroes formed the Justice League of America in March of 1960. Now, at that time, Marvel was on the edge of bankruptcy when Jack Kirby rejoined the company. Now look, accounts vary, but both Stan and Jack have claimed to have come up with the core concept of the team. I will say that the idea of the book, that 4 adventurers go off into space and gain superpowers, was very much like Kirby's DC book, Challengers of the Unknown. Kirby and Lee took the kind of books that were popular at the time and then kind of mashed them up into one comic. The Fantastic Four had romance and monsters, and the team stayed away from superhero uniforms in the first issue, making it feel more like one of those 1950s sci-fi books. But what really set the book apart were the characters. See, unlike DC's perfect, square-jawed heroes that always got along, Kirby's heroes were flawed. In any other comic book, the Thing would have been the villain, but in this book, he was the hero. And Lee gave them dialogue that made them talk like real people. Heroes who disagreed with one another, who fought like a family. And they didn't live in Metropolis or Gotham City, they lived in New York, on those same streets where Kirby and Lee grew up. Ben Grimm, aka The Thing, was especially inspired by Kirby himself. The Thing grew up on the streets, just like Kirby, smoked cigars, just like Kirby, and most importantly, The Thing was always intended to be Jewish, like Kirby. Now, although the Thing's religion wasn't confirmed until decades later, it is still nice that Marvel Studios cast Jewish actor Ebon Moss-Bachrach to play him in the MCU. But the Fantastic Four comics have always been about exploration and scientific discovery, and every week you had no idea what you were going to get from their pages. They may travel to space, or Wakanda, or other dimensions, or fend off supervillains at home. And over the years, great creators like John Byrne and Mark Waid and Dan Slott and countless others have expanded upon this lore. Now, I think that Pedro Pascal was perfect casting in this role. I mean, through projects like The Mandalorian and The Last of Us, he's become a father figure for the entire internet. But frankly, he won my heart during the movie The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent when he said this.
What is your 3rd favorite movie of all time?
Paddington 2.
Well, I have never seen Paddington 2.
Oh my god, it's the best, like this scene. Colton, can you show Paddington 2, please?
Sorry, man. It looks like it's not on anything that we're subscribed to.
What are you talking about? We subscribe to everything. Netflix, Disney Plus, Max, Paramount, Peacock, Amazon, ABC, Apple, Screen Buddy, Screen Stuff Plus, Meow Max.
It says here that we need to subscribe to Movies Max Plus?
Oh man, I'm so sick of this. I pay for all these streaming services and none of them ever got what we want to watch. And my phone is frozen. Oh, jeez.
Actually, you know what, buddy? I got you. There.
Guards, lock me up. The weight you have.
Hurty fruity hoot. What was that? Why am I talking in Swedish?
You were just speaking Swedish because Paddington 2 isn't on Netflix in the US, but it is in Sweden. So I use NordVPN to change our IP address to Sweden, and boom, Paddington 2. Guys, NordVPN can save you so much money on streaming services every month. They also offer safe, secure P2P file sharing for large files. And best of all, they have a feature called Threat Protection. This detects harmful downloads before they start.
Is that why I can't download a video of this year's Puppy Bowl?
Yes, because that file is filled with viruses. Please don't download that. But also, NordVPN's ad blocker is amazing. It's the only ad blocker that I use. See guys, NordVPN has so many features, and this is why I have been a loyal NordVPN customer for 5 years now. You can add up to 6 devices to your account, and you can use it on mobile, TV, or your desktop. And now, if you want to support our channel, NordVPN is offering a great deal through our link below, nordvpn.com/ScreenCrush. When you sign up now, you get a huge discount on a 2-year plan, plus 4 additional bonus months for free. You won't regret it. You'll find yourself using this every single day. Again, save yourself some money, keep yourself protected, and help support our channel by clicking the link below to get a special discount on a 2-year plan plus 4 additional bonus months for free at nordvpn.com/ScreenCrush. Now, back to the trailer. Now, in the movies, filmmakers have often struggled to tell the Fantastic Four stories because of budget constraints. Now, we can make a whole video about all these failed attempts, but this franchise seemed cursed for a long time. The first film, made by B-movie director Roger Corman, was a $1 million scheme to hang on to the rights. The 20s Fantastic Four movies by barbershop director Tim Story had their moments, but really they failed to embrace the comics' pulpy roots and instead kept the team grounded in cheap locations, and they also turned Galactus into a cloud. And Josh Trank's ambitious 2015 film tried to give us a darker, grounded take on the team, which was always a bad idea. It's like making a Superman movie devoid of optimism and joy. And when the MCU started, Marvel Studios couldn't use the Fantastic Four because the rights were held by Fox Studios, that is until Disney bought Fox in 2018. Now, it's taken us 7 years to finally get the movie made, but Marvel wanted the right script and the right director to do justice to this team. And if I could just say, it's a shame this movie is coming out toward the end of the Multiverse saga, because a lot of Marvel movies and shows have wasted the potential of this concept. Like, rather than seeing the FF introduced in Universe 616, Matt Shakman is reimagining them in an alternate version of the 1960s with like more advanced technology, but with 60s fashion and sensibilities. Like, this could end up giving us the most comic accurate adaptation of any character in the MCU. So I'm glad they're finally having fun with the Multiverse saga instead of just using it for cameos and nostalgia baiting. So let's break down this trailer. So for the past few days, Marvel has been telling us that this trailer launch is brought to you by the Future Foundation. Now, in the comics, the Future Foundation was a type of school that Reed Richards started for exceptional or superpowered kids. And for a while, they had their own really fun spin-off book with art by Mike Allred. I highly recommend it. But in this universe, the Future Foundation seems more like a think tank founded by Reed Richards. You see, this movie takes place in an alternate reality, one where Reed Richards' genius gave the world advanced technology in the 1960s. So this creates the fun, retro-futuristic feel that we see in this trailer. And frankly, I think this is what the Multiverse saga should be about. Instead of giving us different versions of characters, give us different versions of realities. It looks like director Matt Shakman had a lot of fun in creating this world. Now, yesterday's teaser gave us our first look at this world, with kids running through the streets of New York, gathering together in front of a store window to watch the launch on a television. Believe it or not, this used to be how people would watch television. If you couldn't afford one for home, people would stand outside of stores and gaze at the tube together. Now notice though the teal blue on this building with white chairs in front of it, hinting at the uniforms of the Fantastic Four. And we see the same color scheme on this Buick in the background. And also notice this rainbow at the back at this park. So this is all telling us little hints that this is a hopeful, optimistic universe. Now on the screen we see images from the trailer that we're going to talk about in a second, but we also see the team preparing for their first launch. This is Johnny putting on a spacesuit here.
Wait, what launch you talking about?
So when the Fantastic Four were created, the space race with the Russians was on everyone's mind. So in the comics, Reed invents a rocket that can take humanity to the stars. But the government threatens to scrap the project. So Reed, his pilot Ben, and then his girlfriend Sue and her little brother Johnny all sneak aboard and do the launch anyways.
So Johnny and Sue came on because, just cause?
Yes. Anyways, they get hit with cosmic rays, and those rays manifest them to get powers based on their personalities. Sue becomes invisible because Reed often ignored her. Johnny is a hothead, so he gets flame powers. Ben thinks of himself as an ugly brute, and Reed's intelligence means he has a flexible mind, so he gets stretching powers. The point is, everything about the Fantastic Four revolves around this launch. So, for the trailer launch, they actually broadcast live from Rocket City in Houston next to the Saturn V rocket that took America to the moon. I love this little touch because it's telling us the tone of this movie is going to be about exploration and optimism. Then the cast came out, had some really awkward banter, and the best part of it was this part where they put their hands in the center over a circle above a button that mimicked the classic comic panel where the Fantastic Four vow to use their powers to help mankind. The trailer begins with elevator doors opening up into the Baxter building. So this is showing us the building from a first-person point of view, like we are being given a tour. Now, the Baxter building is the headquarters of the FF in the comics. For a while, it was replaced with the Four Freedoms Plaza after Dr. Doom teleported the Baxter building off of Earth. So what we're seeing here is one of many ways the New York skyline is different in the comics and in this universe. Notice we open on a recessed floor, which is a very popular style in the 1960s. In fact, if you watch the show Mad Men, you probably remember Don and Megan had one of these in their apartment. So everything we see is in this same retro future style, with subtle touches added to pay tribute to the Fantastic Four. For instance, we see the stonework floor, like the Thing's skin. The fireplace is a nod to Johnny, and this incredibly thin, stretched out chimney is a nod to Reed's stretching powers.
So where do we see Sue's powers?
Oh no, her tribute to this blank space right here. You see, that's your mom. So in the skyline outside, we see the Chrysler building, the wonderful Art Deco structure where Thor bottlenecked the Chitauri in the Avengers. And then we see several new buildings, including 2 spires, kind of like the Space Needle in Seattle. And this building with an orb on top is similar to the Sentry Tower in the comics, which eventually became Avengers Tower. Now, all of these spires are a type of architecture that is common in the Manhattan skyline today, but these glass spires were just not present in the 1960s. So again, this is showing us Reed's influence on the technology of his time. Remember, in Multiverse of Madness, we saw how Reed's genius in that reality created advancements like a greener city, mind-reading holograms, and of course, balls made out of pizza. And everything in this room has this blue and white aesthetic. Now, normally the Fantastic Four uniforms are a darker blue, but the lighter blue kind of makes us think of a blue sky, with the white accents making you think of clouds. So even in their uniforms, they are reminding us that the core of this team began with the rocket launch into the sky, and that they are a team that is born out of the optimism of the space age. I also like the detail that the balcony has chairs and loungers, in case they want to catch a tan before flying off to fight evil. Next, we see Reed in a suit, just like in his first appearance in the comics, when Marvel was still keeping away from the superhero aesthetic that wasn't popular yet at the time. Now notice though, this cake platter is on a hydraulic rising off of the counter. And then he says,
We make a point to do family dinner every week.
now today, a family dinner might seem like an outdated concept, like I'm sure a lot of your families just eat in front of the TV on their phones. But this is reminding us that not only is this in a different era, but this is a team that is a family first. Then we go to this retro Marvel logo that looks like the Brock's Candy logo. Now notice the edges of the film are frayed, like we're watching one of those old educational reels they used to show kids in schools. And then the aspect ratio expands from the 4:3 old film style to the panoramic 16:9 style of the MCU. On our free to join Discord server, which is great by the way, it's like the internet before it became awful, one of our members, Cayman Ranger, pointed out that the 4:3 aspect ratio could be telling us that these events happened in the past, and then that ratio shifts to 16:9 after they get their powers. And then we see the outside of the Baxter building. It's light blue with a 4 in the center, just like their old headquarters for Freedom's Plaza that I mentioned earlier. So this is an interesting choice that the movie has made. Rather than show the origin story of the Fantastic Four, we are meeting the team after they are established and they're already celebrities. Now I think we will still see their origin in flashbacks, or maybe in old newsreel footage during a Baxter building tour. But just like with Spider-Man Homecoming, I think Marvel is assuming that we already know the origin, and so they chose to just hit the ground running. And then we see Herbie, which stands for Humanoid Experimental Robot B-Type Integrated Electronics. He was the FF's robot assistant in the early 1960s books, and I love his design here. He is extremely advanced. Hell, he's a flying robot that can cook, but he's also very retro. His eyes look like they're made out of reel-to-reel spools. Notice how they move independently of one another. And I also love that the little guy is wearing an apron. I mean, at this point, I just want to see some Marvel characters compete in a MasterChef competition. We could have The Thing, Vision, and Thanos. Now, this is our first look at Ebon Moss-Backrack as The Thing, and he looks incredibly comic accurate. So, in the Tim Story films, they opted to put Michael Chiklis in a suit, which was probably cheaper, but let's face it, looked a little silly. In the grimdark Josh Trank film used CGI, but they wanted to portray Ben as a monster to play into the body horror of the Fantastic Four. But this is a Ben Grimm as Jack Kirby intended him, with a wide forehead and baby blue eyes. And notice he's still wearing his full head-to-toe uniform. He wore that uniform in his first few appearances in the comics before eventually taking it down to just his iconic trunks. And the trunks are important because they show that Ben is different from the rest of the team. So the aesthetic of him being bare-chested and everybody else in a uniform always makes him stand just a little bit further apart from the others. So in this scene, he tells Herbie,
I want to add a couple cloves of garlic. Not because it's not delicious, I just want to add a little bit of zip.
And that could be a nod to the role that won Ebon Moss-Backrack 2 Emmys when he played Cousin in a show called The Bear, which is a show about the extreme stress of working in a restaurant. Also notice the lights in the ceiling are circles clustered together, and we saw similar lights in the TVA and Loki.
Does this mean that Reed Richards is like Kang, and that Reed actually created the TVA?
No, the TVA is also designed with this 1960s aesthetic in mind. But you know, it could be that somehow He Who Remains was influenced by this universe's retro-futuristic style. And then a countdown starts, like a space launch.
T-5.
So Reed's blackboard, like the cake platter, is automated, rising up out of the ground. I like that he's using a blackboard and not some kind of futuristic computer because it grounds us in this time and place, in the 1960s. But it also shows that Reed is an academic first, and this brings him back to his roots. And I also want to point out that this blackboard is emerging from a long wooden arch, which is similar to the bridge design of the Enterprise D in Star Trek The Next Generation. Again, these are both instances where people are giving us a sparkling image of an imaginary future. So in the drawing, we see two diagrams that look like wormholes, similar to this diagram on Eric Selvig's blackboard in Thor: The Dark World. Except this one says enter here and exit here. And written beneath them says another universe with an arrow pointing to the exit portal. Now, wormholes here are interesting because remember, at the beginning of Loki episode 6, we had the first person point of view of passing through black holes and entering different universes. So if wormholes are a gateway to the multiverse, then we could be seeing Reed discover multiversal travel. Now, later in the trailer, we do get a glimpse of Galactus, and we have theorized on this channel that Galactus could, in this world, be a devourer of universes and not just of planets. So if the threat of Galactus is approaching Earth through a wormhole, Reed could be calculating the time until his arrival, or if they can even do anything to stop him. And in the comics, we've actually seen Reed Richards using a multiversal portal machine that actually led to Reed meeting the Council of Reeds, similar to that Council of Kangs that we saw in Quantumania. Now, there are rumors that Marvel is pursuing Jonathan Majors for one last role as Kang, essentially to wrap up his character arc in the MCU. Now, in the comics, Kang the Conqueror is actually a descendant of Reed Richards. So what we could be seeing here is that Reed is laying the foundation for the technology that his ancestor, He Who Remains, could use to discover multiversal travel in his time period in the distant future that kicks off the great multiversal war that we heard about in Loki Season 1.
The peace between realities erupted.
Now, Jonathan Majors was fired after being convicted of assault charges, but this is a small way that Marvel could still connect to the past, Kang the Conqueror, while still setting up the future of Doctor Doom. And then we see footage of the team just before their space launch, and I think the colors of their spacesuits, of course, influence the colors of their team uniforms. The rocket is very similar to the one that Jack Kirby drew in Fantastic Four issue 1, except this one has 4 rockets, 1 in the center and 3 on the side, of course in a nod to the Fantastic Four. And the look itself seems inspired by the old Flash Gordon movie serials that inspired George Lucas to create Star Wars. So here we see Reed and Sue in bed, although I don't even think they're married yet, which is very taboo for the time. And also, WandaVision led me to believe that all couples in the 1960s slept in separate beds, but whatever. So Reed is recounting their space flight.
Before we went up the first time, you couldn't turn invisible.
Now here, I think he is expressing guilt. In the comics, Reed never forgives himself because he planned the flight, and it turned Ben into a monster. Ben even warned Reed about the cosmic rays, but Reed did not provide the correct amount of shielding for the ship. So maybe, in this conversation with Sue, he is talking to her about a more simple time. And then we see flashes of Reed and Sue in space when her powers first activate. So in the comics, this happens when they are on the ground. And I think it's interesting that we are seeing this actually play out, and not like in a newsreel or a recreation. So maybe we will get frequent flashbacks to the actual accident, or maybe this will be the movie's opening credit sequence. Sue reminds him that, even though they have powers, they are still the same people.
Ben has always been a rock.
And then we see Ben in a classic comic pose, wearing his trench coat and fedora in a back alley on the streets of New York. Now, like I said earlier, these are the streets where Jack Kirby grew up, and the Thing was always a self-insert for Kirby in these stories. On the TV, he sees images of Reed and himself back when he was handsome. So in the early comics, Ben always felt like his appearance meant that he was cursed to be alone for his entire life. He loves his family, but he longs to truly belong to the human race. Now, in the Tim Story films, we did see an antagonistic relationship between him and Johnny that's in the comics, because, you know, Johnny is always teasing Ben about his appearance. But this isn't just cruel on Johnny's part. Johnny teasing Ben also keeps him from getting too deep into his own thoughts and feeling sorry for himself. So I hope we see some of that antagonistic relationship in this movie. Then we see Johnny jumping from a balcony, and I'm not sure if he shouts this.
Flame on! Sorry, what now?
Hey, how come his clothes don't burn?
Well, because Reed invented something called unstable molecules that, for instance, can adapt to his stretching and can withstand Johnny's flames. We also see Johnny just laying upside down, playing in a spacesuit with a model rocket and his vinyl records in the background. So this is hitting home for us that, well, at least in the comics, Johnny is still a teenager. He's very immature. In fact, in the comics, he has a close relationship with Spider-Man. After all, they're both teenage superheroes. They even have a preferred meeting spot at the top of the Statue of Liberty where we see Galactus at the end of this trailer. Now, Johnny is played by Joseph Quinn, who of course gained fame when he played the Dungeon Master Eddie in Stranger Things Season 4. Now, the main thing that they have to nail with the role of Johnny is that he is immature. Like in the comics, especially the early comics, he loves fast cars, he's always trying to hook up, and he was a very relatable character for a lot of the kids who were reading comics at the time. Now, the Tim Story films turned him into more of a fan-friendly frat bro, so I hope that they keep this more innocent tone that Quinn gives him in this trailer. Now, Reed and Sue's conversation is getting to the heart of of this team. Like I keep saying, they are a family. Reed is the smartest man in the world, but he has no emotional intelligence. But Sue is the heart of this family. She actually understands everybody and holds them together. Next, we see her creating invisible force fields. So these are shapes that she can create that can really do just about anything. They can be diamond hard and small, or like really big and soft to catch people from falling. The force fields make her the most powerful member of the team. She could literally create a bubble inside your brain that would kill you on the spot. Although her powers did evolve over time, so maybe she's not that powerful yet if we're seeing her early in her career. Notice behind her, the streets have already been attacked. For instance, this monorail is damaged. Now, the inclusion of a monorail is really fun. Monorails are lightweight trains that at one point futurists thought would be the model of world transportation. So when Walt Disney designed his Village of Tomorrow, which became Epcot Center, monorails were included in designs. We even see one of them in the Future Expo in Captain America First Avenger. And it's true, guys, monorails did have their time. They put cities like Brockway, Ogdenville, and North Haverhill on the map. But there are no monorails in New York City. In the background here, we see the Fantastic Car, which looks so freaking cool. So in the comics, it's always a variation of a flying car with like different compartments to feed each member of the team, like this one. In fact, we did see a version of it teased in Fant4stick, and also it was in the second Tim Story film. But here, it's been reinvented as a classic 60s car with gull-wing doors, and I'm sure it's going to fly at some point. For instance, there's this scene where Johnny flames out in the upper atmosphere, I think because of lack of oxygen. So I think this is early after he gets his powers, or maybe he's upset, so he just sees how high he can fly. Notice how surprised he seems, though, that he has hit his limit. So this would be a great moment for the Fantastic Car to swoop in and save him. We get some brief action shots of Ben and Johnny. Now remember, this is a teaser trailer, so the full visual effects won't be done yet. Be patient, this is what we have right now. That's why we're getting a more character-focused trailer. And then we see a flash of John Malkovich as the classic FF villain, the Red Ghost. So in the comics, he's a Soviet scientist who mind controls 3 apes. Actually, that's kind of wrong. He doesn't mind control 3 apes, it's more like they're mind linked, and he regards them as family. So if I had to guess, I would say he's like the minor villain in the movie that they take care of earlier, maybe in the opening action sequence to show us the team's powers early in the film. And then later, the threat of Galactus arrives on Earth, and maybe they need the Red Ghost's help. Now, that is currently only a theory. Malkovich looks like the Red Ghost, and the villain would fit into the story's Cold War setting, but there are other theories. He could be playing the Mole Man, the king of the subterranean world who fought the Fantastic Four in their first issue. Or I think he might be playing Dr. Doom's loyal servant, Boris. See, in the comics, Doom and Reed are old adversaries, and there are rumors that Robert Downey Jr.'s Doom is going to make a cameo in this movie. But let me know your thoughts down in the comments. And then we see flames in the sky. So this movie seems like it's going to adapt the Fantastic Four Galactus trilogy. At the beginning of that story, the Watcher creates illusions in the sky around Earth that makes it appear as if the sky is on fire. And then he fills it with asteroids, and he does this in an attempt to hide the Earth from Galactus.
Wait, who's Galactus?
So let me give you a little background on Galactus and the Silver Surfer. These two characters were created by Jack Kirby. See, Kirby was always fascinated by gods, myths, and these larger-than-life cosmic figures. He originally conceived of the Surfer as being a being of pure energy that Galactus had created. Then Galactus sends him to different planets to find suitable worlds to eat.
Yummy!
And the Surfer is completely dispassionate about this until he arrives on Earth. Now on Earth, he meets the Thing's girlfriend, Alicia Masters, and she teaches him human compassion. This is part of the epic Galactus trilogy from Fantastic Four issue 48 through 50. Now normally, comic book stories only lasted for 1 issue, so it was very rare for a story to go on for 3 straight comics. Jack and Stan did a great job of making it feel like the end of the world had arrived, and the heroes truly felt like they had no way to defeat this new awesome cosmic force. It was only with the help of the Silver Surfer and the Watcher that they were able to find the device called the Ultimate Nullifier that was able to scare Galactus away from Earth. Now, over the years, Galactus' origin was fleshed out. He was originally a scientist named Galen who existed in a universe before ours, and then, after his universe ended, he was reborn into this new universe as a planet-devouring scourge. He returned over the years and came to be regarded as more of a force of nature than a villain. In the comic book Earth X, they even revealed that he ate planets just to prevent Celestials from overpopulating the universe. Now, in a very controversial issue from the John Byrne run, Reed Richards actually realizes Galactus' importance and saves his life, which means that Reed was indirectly responsible for trillions of deaths.
Cool motive, still murder.
Now, after the Silver Surfer betrays Galactus, he punishes him by keeping him confined to the Earth. Meanwhile, Galactus would go on to choose many other heralds over the years. Some became heroes, others became villains, and the Surfer was eventually freed from his confines on Earth and then spun off into his own series series of solo books. And if you want to read a great run, I suggest the recent Dan Slott, Mike Allred series. It is phenomenal. And finally, I want to address the greatest controversy about this character.
That it's being played by a lady in this movie?
No. Stan Lee altered Kirby's original vision in a new Silver Surfer comic that was drawn by John Buscema. In that book, Lee raised a leg on the Surfer's origin and revealed that he was not a being of cosmic energy, he was a scientist named Norrin Radd, who had bargained with Galactus to spare his planet, Zenn-La. So, this change in the origin really rankled Kirby, and it's one of the many reasons he ended up leaving Marvel for DC. And at DC, he created the New Gods and one of the all-time greatest villains, Darkseid. Now, at our live show, I went on a long rant about the Silver Surfer because he's one of my favorite characters, and actually, we only have 3 days left of our live show tour. Next month, we are going to be in Charlotte, Atlanta, and Orlando. I love doing these shows for you guys. We have special guests, exclusive breakdowns, sketches, comedy bits, but the best part is that we get to meet you guys face to face, answer your questions, nerd out together. The link for tickets are below. Now, it's also rumored that Jeffrey Wright is going to reprise his role as Uatu the Watcher from What If. So what if season 3 ended with the Watchers deciding they would interfere in the affairs of the multiverse? Maybe this is why. Maybe the Watcher shows up to try to save this universe from Galactus. Also, remember, in What If Season 3, we learned that Uatu had already helped a Reed Richards.
That does not explain your intervention to save Riri Williams.
That was one time out of trillions.
Oh, Kwai Jun Fan, Reed Richards.
And he could have been referring to the events of this movie. So in the trailer, we see these kids dressing up as the Thing, gazing up at this fire in the sky. This could be Halloween, or these could be fans gathered outside the Baxter building. Like I said, the Fantastic Four are celebrities. And then we get a brief shot of Reed in space, probably directly after the accident, as he's trying to figure out what the hell is happening to his family. And then we see the shadow of Galactus loom over New York. Now, this storyline was previously adapted in the 2007 Tim Story film, Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer, which had its high points, but as you can tell from the title, they were trying to spin the Silver Surfer off into his own movie. But that movie really skimped on the visual effects budget. Galactus was portrayed as a giant cloud, which sure is cheap to make, but it don't inspire fear. Oddly enough, the Green Lantern movie 4 years later repeated the same mistake, portraying Parallax as a huge cloud.
If I had a nickel for every time I was doomed by a puppet, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice, right?
Now in this film, Galactus is portrayed by Ralph Ensign, who is a great actor, but he was cast because his voice sounds like this.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
Sorry, I meant like this.
I'll be judged by false Christians, for I have done nothing save preach Christ's true gospel.
And by the way, notice this view of Manhattan. These skyscrapers on the east side are not there in the real world, so I'm thinking this is the future plaza that we talked about earlier. Notice there's even a rocket launching pad in the East River where the Fantastic Four can launch their space missions. And the trailer ends with Sue hitting home on what the team is about.
As a family.
And then we see the team in their full retro suits. Light blue, white gloves, white boots, with arrows pointing at them. Nice aesthetic. I think this could be the shoot of some promotional film for this new team, or it could be an actual TV appearance where they're revealing themselves to the world. And then the score comes in. And even in these small snippets we're getting, we can tell that this is a movie about exploration and discovery. And the title of the movie, First Steps, likely has a couple of different meanings. One, it refers to this being the first outing for this team in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's kind of a meta title, like Daredevil Born Again or Spider-Man Homecoming. But this could also be the first steps into space, as the FF meet a life form from another world. I mean, like Nick Fury said,
you become part of a bigger universe. You just don't know it yet.
Now, as for what all of this is setting up, we do have a few theories that we're going to be talking about in videos coming up soon. But first, what did you guys think of the trailer? Are you excited about the movie? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below on our free-to-join Discord server, or you can get me on Blue Sky, Twitter, or Threads. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe and smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.